When three African nations stand up at once, the world listens. But this time, the shock did not come from a battlefield or an uprising. It came from the very core of international law. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, the heart of the Sahel, a region already scarred by poverty, terrorism, and foreign interventions, announced a withdrawal from the International Criminal Court. For some, this was unthinkable. For others, it was inevitable. But what does it mean when sovereign states in Africa reject an institution designed, at least in theory, to uphold justice? What does it mean when those who are supposed to be protected by global law now turn their backs on it? And perhaps most importantly, what truths are hidden beneath the surface of this decision? The International Criminal Court, or ICC, was established in 2002 to prosecute individuals for genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and the crime of aggression. It was sold to the world as a beacon of accountability, a way to ensure that the worst abuses of power could never go unanswered. Yet in its 20 years of existence, the overwhelming majority of its cases have targeted Africa. Leaders, rebels, generals almost exclusively African. Not a single Western leader, despite well-documented invasions, bombings, and questionable wars, has ever faced trial in The Hague. This imbalance has fueled resentment across the continent. And now, in the Sahel, resentment has turned into outright rejection. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have all faced devastating internal conflicts. Islamist insurgencies tear through villages, leaving thousands dead and millions displaced. Terrorism thrives in rural areas, and governments struggle to maintain control beyond the capital cities. At the same time, the people of these nations live in some of the harshest conditions on earth. Poverty is staggering, unemployment is rampant, and foreign interference is a daily reality. France, once a colonial power, maintained influence in their militaries and economies for decades. Western alliances shaped policy, while foreign corporations extracted gold, uranium, and other resources with little benefit trickling down to the local populations. Against this backdrop, it becomes clearer why these countries would challenge an institution like the ICC. To them, the court is not a neutral arbiter of justice. It is another tool of Western dominance, one that places African leaders under the microscope while ignoring the crimes of powerful nations. In 2016, Burundi became the first country to withdraw from the ICC, citing bias against Africans. At the time, the move was seen as extreme. But now, with three nations making the same decision simultaneously, we are witnessing a turning point. Critics of the withdrawal argue that leaving the ICC will only strengthen impunity for war crimes within these countries. After all, civilians in Mali and Burkina Faso have been victims of both jihadist groups and state-backed militias. If international oversight disappears, who will protect the innocent? This is the argument pushed by human rights organizations. Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch have both expressed concern, warning that vulnerable populations will lose an important avenue for justice. But supporters of the decision see it differently. They point out that the ICC has done little to bring peace or justice to Sahel. Investigations have dragged on for years without concrete results. While local populations suffer, cases in The Hague stall in legal technicalities. To the governments of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, it is better to build local systems of justice, however imperfect, than to rely on a distant court that has shown no urgency to address their pain. The announcement itself was not made in secret. It was a defiant declaration. Leaders of these nations stood before their people and the world, stating clearly that they would no longer submit to a system that treats Africa as a courtroom and the rest of the world as untouchable. They emphasized sovereignty, dignity, and the right to chart their own future. In their eyes, withdrawing from the ICC is not about shielding themselves from justice. It is about breaking free from a cycle of dependency and humiliation. Consider the historical weight behind this. For decades, Africa has been told what justice looks like by foreign institutions. When Libya's Muammar Gaddafi was killed, it was not because of an ICC trial. It was a result of NATO bombs. When Western nations invaded Iraq under false pretenses, there was no trial in The Hague for those who orchestrated it. When drone strikes kill civilians in the Middle East and Africa, the perpetrators are never brought to account before international law. Yet when an African leader or rebel commander is accused of crimes, the the ICC swiftly intervenes. The pattern is too obvious to ignore. For the people of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, this hypocrisy resonates deeply. They live with the daily reality of double standards. Their resources are extracted for the benefit of foreign nations. Their lands are patrolled by foreign troops. Their leaders are judged by foreign courts. To them, withdrawal from the ICC is more than a legal maneuver. It is a symbolic rejection of neocolonialism. Still, symbolism alone cannot solve the enormous challenges these countries face. Terrorism has not slowed. Climate change is making farming harder. Droughts and floods devastate already fragile economies. Corruption and weak institutions undermine trust in local governance. So the question remains, without the ICC, how will justice be ensured? The leaders of these nations argue that African problems require African solutions. They speak of strengthening regional mechanisms, such as the African Court on Human and People's Rights. They speak of building local courts, empowering traditional justice systems, and investing in national institutions. They acknowledge that these systems are not yet perfect, but they insist that self-reliance is the only path forward. In their narrative, the ICC has had 2 decades to prove itself and has failed. Now, Africa must take responsibility for its own justice. The shock waves of this decision are being felt beyond Africa. In Europe and North America, policymakers worry that this withdrawal will encourage other nations to follow suit. If African states begin exiting the ICC en masse, the legitimacy of the court itself will collapse. Already, Kenya, Uganda, and South Africa have voiced strong criticisms of the ICC in the past. South Africa even attempted to withdraw in 2016, but later reversed the decision. If Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger succeed in framing the withdrawal as a move towards sovereignty and dignity, it may inspire a broader exodus. For Western governments, this is a nightmare scenario. The ICC, though flawed, is still one of the few international tools they can point to as evidence of global accountability. If African nations abandon it, the illusion of universality shatters. And if universality shatters, then the question becomes, is international justice only for the weak? This moment is not just about law, it is about power. It is about who gets to define justice and who must submit to it. For the people of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, leaving the ICC is a way of reclaiming agency in a world that has long treated them as subjects rather than equals. The withdrawal from the International Criminal Court cannot be seen in isolation. It comes at a time when Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are facing extraordinary challenges both internally and externally. Internally, their populations demand security, food, and dignity. Externally, they face pressure from Western governments, international NGOs, and institutions that insist that abandoning the ICC is a betrayal of justice. But what many outsiders fail to grasp is that the very concept of justice is contested. Justice to a villager in the Sahel whose home has been burned by extremists does not necessarily mean a trial in The Hague years later. Justice to him might mean safety tomorrow, food for his children, and the assurance that those responsible cannot strike again. When critics in Europe and North America accuse these nations of backsliding on human rights, the response in the Sahel is sharp. Where were you when our villages were burning? Where was your justice when our children starved, when terrorists roamed free, when corruption hollowed out our states? For decades, Western institutions have dictated standards without delivering solutions. The result has been deepening resentment, not only toward the ICC, but toward the entire international system. This resentment is not born out of ignorance. The leaders of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are highly aware of global dynamics. They know the ICC has symbolic power. They know that by leaving, they are sending a political message as much as a legal one. That message is clear. Sovereignty matters more than foreign approval. For them, the legitimacy of their governments comes not from recognition in The Hague, but from the trust of their people. If their citizens see withdrawal from the ICC as an act of defiance against unfair treatment, then the leaders stand to gain politically at home, even if they lose goodwill abroad. The timing of this move also reveals much. These 3 countries, all part of the Sahel, have recently seen military takeovers. Their new leadership frames itself as nationalist, Pan-African, and unapologetically resistant to Western pressure. They emphasize independence, resource control, and dignity. By leaving the ICC together, they present a united front, showing the world that this is not just one nation acting out of self-interest, but a coordinated regional stance. In their speeches, they frame this unity as part of broader realignment in Africa, a rejection of institutions that have long treated the continent as inferior. The international response has been predictably divided. Human rights organizations express alarm, warning that victims of war crimes will be silenced. Western governments voice concern, framing the move as a dangerous precedent. Yet among many African citizens, particularly in countries with similar experiences of foreign meddling, the move is met with admiration. Across social media platforms, Africans celebrate this as a step toward dignity. Memes, videos, and posts highlight the irony of Western outrage. The same powers that have invaded Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya without consequence are now angry that African countries no longer want to submit to their courts. Historical context deepens the argument. The ICC itself is built on treaties. Nations sign on voluntarily, and nations can leave voluntarily. This is not a crime, nor is it unprecedented. The United States, one of the world's most powerful countries, never joined the ICC in the first place. Washington feared that its soldiers and politicians might be prosecuted for their global interventions. Israel, Russia, and China also reject the ICC. So when critics accuse Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger of undermining justice, the counterpoint is obvious. If great powers can opt out without consequence, why can't African nations? Moreover, the ICC's record in Africa is riddled with controversy. In Kenya, the prosecution of President Uhuru Kenyatta collapsed due to lack of evidence, leaving behind a trail of political tension but no accountability. In Sudan, the indictment of Omar al-Bashir for genocide in Darfur was hailed as historic, yet he remained in power for years, traveling freely to allied countries without arrest. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the ICC secured some convictions against rebel leaders, but the conflict itself continued unabated. These examples reinforce the argument that ICC trials do not bring peace, and sometimes they do little to bring justice either. The Sahel nations are not alone in voicing disillusionment. South Africa once attempted withdrawal after a dispute over its refusal to arrest al-Bashir during a state visit. Kenya's parliament debated withdrawal after Kenyatta's indictment. Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni has openly criticized the court as a tool of Western imperialism. These sentiments show that Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are not acting in isolation. They are giving institutional shape to frustration that has long simmered across the continent. Still, the risks are real. By leaving the ICC, these nations remove an external check on their governments. If abuses are committed by their armies or security forces, the ICC can no longer intervene. The burden of accountability now falls entirely on local institutions that may not be strong enough to resist political pressure. This is why critics argue that withdrawal risks entrenching impunity. Without robust local systems, the cycle of abuse could deepen. The leaders of these nations insist otherwise. They argue that only by strengthening local institutions can real accountability take root, and reliance on external institutions only delays that growth. The Sahel region is also undergoing dramatic shifts in foreign relations. French troops, once central to counterterrorism operations, have been asked to leave. Russian military support, through private contractors and state cooperation, has increased. China has quietly expanded its economic footprint through infrastructure deals. These new alignments suggest that the withdrawal from the ICC is part of a larger strategic pivot away from Western dominance and toward a multipolar world where African states choose their partners more freely. In this context, the ICC represents more than a court. It represents the entire architecture of Western-led global governance. To reject it is to reject an entire worldview where the West dictates rules and Africa obeys. It is a profound statement of defiance, but defiance is only the beginning. The real test will be whether Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger can transform their rejection of external justice into construction of credible internal justice systems. Without that, their withdrawal risks being seen not as a step towards sovereignty, but as an excuse for authoritarianism. For ordinary citizens, however, the immediate impact is not about legal systems in The Hague. It is about symbolism. In villages where people have long felt abandoned by both their governments and the international community, The withdrawal is seen as a bold act. It is seen as a signal that their leaders are willing to take risks, to break rules, to stand against the powerful. This symbolism matters because in regions where hope is scarce, symbols often carry more weight than policies. We must not forget the broader global implications either. If the ICC loses credibility in Africa, it loses credibility everywhere. Already, countries like the Philippines under Rodrigo Duterte threaten withdrawal. If more nations follow, the court could become a hollow institution, prosecuting only the weakest while the powerful walk free. This is the greatest danger, that international justice becomes a selective tool, further dividing the world into those who are judged and those who are untouchable. And so, the withdrawal of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. Can international justice truly exist without equality? Can institutions built by the powerful ever be trusted by the powerless? And if the answer is no, then what alternative systems must we build? When history is written, it is not always the wars, the conquests, or the revolutions that define a generation. Sometimes it is a moment when a nation simply says, no more. For Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, that moment has come in the form of rejecting the International Criminal Court. It is a refusal that resonates far beyond the Sahel, because it challenges a structure of power that has been in place for decades. To understand the defiance of these three nations, one must first understand the depth of frustration with the way the international order has operated. For too long, Africa has been positioned as the testing ground for experiments in governance, peacekeeping, and law. The ICC became the sharp edge of this experiment. Its cases against African leaders, warlords, and militias were presented as proof of impartial justice. Yet the glaring absence of cases against Western figures told another story entirely. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan with countless civilian deaths, the destruction of Libya that plunged a stable nation into chaos, the drone wars that have taken lives in Somalia, Yemen, and Pakistan, all of these remain untouched by The Hague. The ICC's silence on such issues became louder than any trial it conducted in Africa. This silence is what gave Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger the moral grounds to resist. Their defiance is not only legal, it is political, cultural, and symbolic. It is an act of reclaiming dignity in the face of global hypocrisy. When leaders in the Sahel stand before their people and say, "We will no longer bow to a system that judges us while shielding others," they are tapping into centuries of resentment, stretching back to colonial exploitation. Colonialism may have ended on paper, but its legacy lives on in the economic, political, and judicial systems that Africa interacts with daily. Institutions like the IMF, World Bank, and ICC are often seen as continuations of that legacy, dressed in the language of progress but rooted in asymmetry. When Mali expels French troops, when Niger reclaims control of its uranium, when Burkina Faso turns away Western advisors, these are not isolated acts, they are part of a pattern. And the withdrawal from the ICC fits neatly into this narrative. A rejection of dependency, a rejection of foreign control, and a declaration that African nations will chart their own course, regardless of Western approval. The defiance of these three nations becomes even more powerful because it is collective. One country leaving the ICC could be dismissed as an anomaly, a temporary political stunt. But three countries bound together by geography, culture, and shared struggle, turning away simultaneously send a message of solidarity. It says to the world, this is not one voice crying the wilderness. This is a chorus demanding respect. And that chorus may soon inspire others. Already, across the continent, discussions grow louder about whether African nations should remain bound to treaties and agreements that do not serve their interests. This act of unity also carries practical weight. Alone, each of these nations is vulnerable politically, economically, and militarily. But together, they form a bloc capable of reshaping regional dynamics. Their withdrawal from the ICC is part of a broader effort to align policies, share resources, and coordinate strategies. It is a statement not only against the ICC, but in favor of African solidarity, a vision of regional cooperation that could eventually give rise to stronger continental institutions. At the heart of this climax is the idea of justice itself. Who defines it? Who enforces it? Who benefits from it? For years, the ICC claimed to speak on behalf of humanity. yet its focus remained fixated on Africa. By withdrawing, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are rejecting this monopoly on justice. They are saying, in effect, that Africans have the right to define justice for themselves. They are asserting that international law cannot be universal if it is not applied universally. This assertion carries profound implications. It challenges not just the ICC, but the entire structure of post-Cold War global governance. If Africa no longer accepts the authority of Western-led institutions, the balance of power shifts. We are already witnessing a pivot toward new partners: Russia, China, Turkey, and others who present themselves as alternatives to the West. Whether these alternatives will deliver justice and prosperity remains to be seen. But the very fact that African nations are exploring them signals a turning point. Critics may dismiss this as a reckless gamble, but for the people of Sahel, it is a necessary gamble. Their patience has worn thin. They have seen foreign soldiers on their soil for decades, yet terrorism continues to spread. They have seen international courts issue indictments, yet victims remain unprotected. They have seen promises of development, yet poverty deepens. At some point, the cost of obedience outweighs the risks of defiance. That point has now been reached. Consider how ordinary citizens view this moment. In the streets of Ouagadougou, Bamako, and Niamey, young people celebrate their leaders' defiance. They wave flags, chant slogans, and share messages of pride on social media. They do not see withdrawal from the ICC as a loss of justice. They see it as a reclaiming of agency. For a generation that has grown up watching their nations portrayed as weak and dependent, this act is a reminder that dignity is still possible. Yet it is also a dangerous moment. The withdrawal places these countries on a collision course with powerful international actors. Sanctions, diplomatic isolation, and economic pressure may follow. Western governments may use aid and trade as leverage, punishing these nations for their defiance. The ICC itself may continue to pursue cases against individuals in these countries, regardless of withdrawal, since its jurisdiction can extend over crimes committed before the exit. The road ahead is fraught with challenges, but this is precisely what makes the defiance so powerful. To reject the ICC despite knowing the cost is an act of political courage or recklessness, depending on one's perspective. It is a gamble that the people will stand behind their leaders, that regional solidarity will grow, and that new alliances will offset Western retaliation. If this gamble succeeds, it could mark the beginning of a new era of African assertiveness. If it fails, it could deepen instability. Either way, the decision ensures that the Sahel will remain at the center of global attention. The climax of this story is not the withdrawal itself, but what it represents: a breaking point in the relationship between Africa and the institutions that claim to govern it. It is a loud refusal to remain silent in the face of double standards. It is a declaration that justice without equality is no justice at all. And it is a reminder to the world that Africa is no longer content to be judged. It is ready to judge the system that has judged it for so long. The decision of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger to withdraw from the International Criminal Court is more than a legal act. It is a turning point in the broader struggle for sovereignty, dignity, and fairness on the global stage. These three nations, situated in one of the most fragile and conflict-ridden regions of the world, have chosen to take a path that defies convention and challenges the established order. Their message is simple yet profound. We will no longer be subjected to a system that does not serve us, and we will no longer allow ourselves to be judged by rules that are not applied equally across the globe. To summarize, the hook that captured global attention was the shocking announcement itself, a move that many believed would never materialize. For decades, African countries have expressed frustration with the ICC, yet most remain within its framework. But now, with Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger acting collectively, that frustration has translated into action. It is no longer talk, it is reality. The introduction of this moment lies in the harsh realities of the Sahel. Poverty, terrorism, and instability have plagued the region for years. International aid has often failed to address root causes. Foreign military interventions have produced mixed results at best. And justice, as promised by institutions like the ICC, has felt distant and selective. Against this backdrop, the withdrawal is not just about the ICC. It is about reclaiming control in a world where control has long been denied. The problem presented by this move is twofold. On one hand, it challenges the credibility of the ICC, exposing its weaknesses and double standards. On the other hand, it raises concerns about accountability in the Sahel itself. Without the ICC, will local systems of justice be strong enough to hold powerful actors to account? Will the people truly gain more protection, or will impunity grow? These are difficult questions, and they will shape the future of these nations. The exploration of this decision reveals a complex web of history, politics, and symbolism, from the colonial legacy to the selective prosecution of African leaders, from the symbolism of defiance to practical need for regional solidarity. The withdrawal represents more than a legal dispute. It represents a reshaping of identity. It is an effort to say to the world, we are not subject to external courts. We are nations capable of charting our own destiny. The climax of this story lies in the act of defiance itself. At a time when global institutions are already under scrutiny for bias and inefficiency, the united stance of these three nations is nothing short of historic. It shows that Africa is no longer content to quietly accept global double standards. It shows that leaders in Sahel are willing to risk sanctions, isolation, and criticism in order to make a statement of independence. It is a gamble, yes, but it is also a declaration of pride. And now, as we move to conclusion, the implications of this decision become clear. For the ICC, the credibility crisis deepens. If more African nations follow this path, the court risks becoming irrelevant. For Africa, the moment is both an opportunity and a test. The opportunity is to build stronger, fairer local systems of justice that reflect African realities and values. The test is whether leaders will use this freedom to empower their people, or whether they will use it to escape accountability. The global order must also reckon with this reality. For too long, justice has been selective. For too long, powerful nations have acted with impunity, while weaker nations have been judged harshly. This imbalance cannot last forever. The withdrawal from the ICC is a symptom of a larger shift toward a multipolar world where power is more evenly distributed, where institutions cannot claim authority without legitimacy, and where Africa is no longer a passive subject but an active shaper of global politics. For citizens across Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, the withdrawal is more than politics. It is a symbol of dignity. It is a statement that their nations will not be dictated to. It is a spark of pride in regions that have known too much suffering and humiliation. Whether this moment leads to real justice and development remains to be seen. But for now, it has given people hope that their leaders are willing to challenge unfair systems, hope that sovereignty is possible, hope that the future can be different. And so, the story of these three nations leaving the ICC is not only about law. It is about power, identity, and defiance. It is about the courage to walk away from a system that does not serve you, even when the risks are high. It is about the determination to build something new, something more authentic to the African experience. The world will be watching closely. Some will cheer, others will criticize, and many will wait to see what comes next. But one thing is certain: the withdrawal has already changed the conversation. It has forced us to confront uncomfortable truths about international justice, global inequality, and the meaning of sovereignty in the 21st century. As we close, the challenge now is for these nations to prove that their act of defiance is not just symbolic, but transformative. The people will hold them accountable, history will judge them, and the world will measure them against their promises. The choice before them is stark. Either build systems of justice that truly serve their people, or risk turning defiance into disillusionment. To everyone watching this, I invite you to reflect on this historic moment. What does justice mean to you? Do you believe international institutions can truly be fair, or do you believe sovereignty requires a different path? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let us know where you stand on this debate. And if you want to explore more stories like this, stories of leadership, sovereignty, and Africa's fight for dignity, check out the related videos on this channel. Together, we can continue this important conversation and shed light on the forces shaping our world today.